This is FightFans Radio.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Untethered MMA on FightFans Radio. It is March 14th, 2013. And if you want to reach the show, you can call us at 410-988-6525. And you can reach your hosts on Twitter. You can reach me at It's Mike Fagan. You can reach Derek at FightLinkerSubo. And you can reach Matt Roth, who will not be participating today, at MattRoth512. Matt, who lives in Austin, is down hanging out South by Southwest, so hopefully we'll get him back next week. He's not residually upset at Derek for the past couple weeks.
I hope he is. I fucking hope he is.
Speaking of Derek, how you doing today, buddy?
What is this, like our 9 millionth episode? What episode number are we on right now? We've been doing this for a minute now, Mikey.
According to the last tweet from the FightFans Radio account, we're at number 61.
That is fucking, and I've been here for 60 of them. So not too shabby. I had a class with my nutbag professor today, which is a hashtag that I'm trying to popularize on Twitter, my nutbag professor. Basically, Mike, there's no such thing as worker exploitation as long as the worker is allowed to leave the place that he's working at. If you can quit and they don't shoot you, then you're not being exploited.
I just got a tweet from my dad. Apparently, I'll read the tweet. He says, "Careful, Nana is listening," and Nana being my grandmother.
Holy shit.
He's down visiting her in Florida.
No fucking way.
Yeah, so she's going to be up for Easter, which will be nice, and she'll be meeting my girlfriend for the first time, which should be interesting. Yeah, I got hockey on right now at 6 o'clock. We got a 6:10 puck drop. And
hey, how do you feel about my team ending your team's streak?
You know, actually, when they lost, Hawks almost scored just now already. When they lost, I was glad that it just wasn't to Vancouver or Detroit. I mean, that streak had to end at some point. Someone was going to run into them. I think the Hawks just sort of, this is actually their first game since Sunday, I believe. But before that, they really hadn't had more than a couple of days off in between games, and it was mostly back-to-backs and 1 day off. And when you combine that with going into Colorado at that altitude,
we almost did it the night before too. We almost beat you the game before we beat you.
Yeah. Well, and the thing, too, I mean, you could tell even in the first period when it was 1-1, the Hawks just looked sluggish.
All we have is young, fast speed and aggressiveness, we chase the puck. Like, that's all we have. We don't have good players or old players. We just have speed and tenacity.
Right. You're one of the few teams, the Hawks really love to play that style, and Colorado is one of the few teams that can match, maybe not talent, but they definitely have that same sort of style.
Maybe not talent. No, we suck. We're not even going to make playoffs. We're not going to make the playoffs this year.
Well, the other thing I had going on Saturday, I had the IBJJF Chicago Open here in Chicago, down in Chicago State University, which for those of you who aren't familiar with the area, not the best neighborhood. So the night before, the IBJJF actually released the bracket, and I searched. I had a bye in the first round, so I was real excited. And then I looked at the two guys I was potentially going to face in the second round. One of the guys I actually had fought 3 weeks ago at a tournament called Combat Corner up near Milwaukee. I fought him in the second round, and he beat me by armbar. But I knew I could. I knew part of it was that I was really gassed. But he's a really good blue belt, so I knew I was going to have a good fight with him. The other guy, I looked up his name. He has a 3-0 pro MMA record, and the other video I caught of him was from the 2011 Worlds at blue belt. So he's been a blue belt for at least 2.5, 3 years, and has been competing. I would assume regularly and at a pretty high level for the past couple of years. So I knew if I fought that guy, it was not going to go well. I watched their match from the sideline, and the Kevin Chung was his name. Kevin Chung just kind of
beat by a Chinaman.
had his way with the guy that beat me, and I knew that I kind of resigned the fact that I was not going to win. Which helps in a sense too, because you don't have to that with the result sort of already kind of finalized in your head, you don't have that pressure of having to not knowing what's going to happen per se. The thing I love though, my coach before the match, I was talking to him, and he had seen the fight before, and he's like, tell me what to do. Tell me to, play my close guard, play with the collar. And he's like, he looked tired when he came out. So, he worked for that too. And I knew when he said that he, that he knew how good that guy was and how not good I was. Anyway, so I tweeted out the link before the show. It's a highlight from the Chicago Open. My coach found it yesterday, and he told me about it. And basically there's no clips from any belt lower than brown belt. It's mostly black and brown belt. And then there's one blue belt match, and it's me getting choked out. So
either they love him or it was just very impressive. It's good to hear that you have such a strong warrior spirit that you knew that you were just fucked 8 different ways before you even stepped on the mat with this guy.
It's not so much a warrior spirit. It's just, I
where's your Budo, man?
Well, I in my head, I still had, I'm going to go out, I'm going to give it my best.
In my head, I had already lost.
Well, at the same time, I'm no dummy. And, when you've got a guy who I know has a pro MMA record, has a pretty extensive competition record at my belt level, and I saw him just run a train on the guy before me.
That just means the upset's going to be bigger, baby. That's the mindset. Means he sees you coming. You got him right where you want him. All the pressure's on him.
The sick thing was that while I was waiting for our match, I was trying to handicap what the line would be, and I was like, it has to be like minus 2,000. It has to be something ridiculous. I don't know. If there's any way I beat him unless he hurts himself and falls into something. But at the same time, I'll say this: I was happy with the way I fought. I thought I handled myself well. I didn't panic like you were saying before the show, Derek. I didn't panic when he got me in the choke.
No, you didn't spaz out and just say fuck this. You tried to be, well, he was going for the head and arm, and then he just kind of ended up snaking over you. Like he was pretty smooth with it.
His whole game was he would pass your guard, kind of work either knee on belly or kind of get into the mount, and would work for the arm triangle. If he couldn't get the arm triangle, he would transition to it was like a weird arm triangle / Ezekiel choke, and then if he didn't get that, he moved
to the arm bar.
Probably the arm bar, yeah.
Just throws his leg over your face because from mount he would kind of hop he'd almost like get too tall on you, so it looked like you could hop out the back door, and then he'd just swing over your face with your arm trap.
So yeah, I think it was hard for me to tell what was going on. It seemed like he had, because I know he had my collar. I think he ended up with the Ezekiel from that weird position. But yeah, the nice thing too though is that unless you know that that's me, you really can't tell. I mean, unless you were at that match, remembered my face, or I tell you that at 104 I get tapped out by the dude that won the division. That's the other thing too. He won the division, and we had a pretty big division. We had 30 guys, so he went through 5 guys to win that.
What'd you get the first round bye for? Was your opponent just too terrified? I'm not rolling with Mike Fagan. Fuck that. No.
There was 2 buys, just because the way the bracket ended up working out. There just weren't enough guys to fill it out completely.
Well, yeah, when you got 30, then it's going to be a little off.
Right.
I'd like to have 32.
Right. But yeah, it was a good experience. The other thing too, my coach said that's probably the best guy you're ever going to fight at blue belt at a competition, and knowing that I could, at the very least, not totally panic and flip out. That's something to take away from it.
Yeah, no, definitely a cool story, bro. And I do mean that it's a cool story. I want to have jujitsu stories. I'm getting to the point where I either need to tell people that I train or tell people that I don't, and enough of this. I'm going to bullshit. I finally have all my fucking bills done. I just bought tags for my truck, and I think I got enough left to at least buy a month of jujitsu. Shit's expensive, man. I'm sure it's a lot easier in big cities when you got black belts just falling out of trees, but I live in a city of 600,000 people, and there are like 2 schools that have black belts. So they're going to charge a premium.
What do you pay?
Well, they offer the first month for $99.
And then
I don't know. Like the last contract I signed was for $150 a month, and I can't do that again.
Yeah, that's actually not that weird out here. I get a special. I mean, I don't know how my gym gets away with it. They when I first signed up, the gym membership was $40, and that was for everything except jujitsu. So you got boxing, kickboxing, access to the gym. If you wanted jujitsu, it was an extra $20. So I got $60 a month for unlimited jiu-jitsu, unlimited boxing, kickboxing, Zumba, all the other weird classes they have. I still get that deal. I think they've bumped it up to $70 or maybe even $80 now. But that's an almost unheard of deal, especially my coach is a black belt. He's been teaching there for 5 years now. Almost unheard of. I know most other schools in big cities are 100, 150. I know in New York, like Marcella's school is like $200 a month. So 150 doesn't really surprise me.
It's crazy. I'm working maybe 15 hours a week right now for like $10 an hour. So I'm making maybe $600 a month after taxes. And then I've got my car insurance is $170. I'm paying off my fucking tooth, which is $200. I can't do it for that much money, but I am going to at least buy a month, and then maybe, I'll suck somebody's dick and they'll let me keep going.
Is there I like that we've been talking jiu-jitsu for 10 minutes. Is there like a major university or school near you?
I'm glad I worked a fellatio reference into the episode that I know that your mother is listening to, your Nana is listening to. Near me, like what kind of school is near me? What were you asking?
Like a major university. Usually a lot of big schools have like a grappling club or a jiu-jitsu club.
I think that they're the closest eastern place to here is in Castle Rock, which is about a half-hour drive north. They're the guys I was paying $150 to last year for 6 months. They're great, excellent. I recommend them to anybody that's in Colorado. But it's just that plus the commute, I can't really swing. I think they're affiliated with a couple schools down here, but everything down here is independent. There's a couple guys at a place called Prime Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I believe they're Machado black belts. I think there's 2 of them. So that's where I'm looking at right now. They're the $99 for the first month place.
I was talking about university, like school, like Colorado University.
Oh, yeah. I go to the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs. Like that's where I go to school.
Yeah, because there might be a club that you can join.
No. It's the big. All we got is Christian clubs and that kind of stupid shit and stoners. There's a lot of Romney clubs last year. But that's not a bad idea, actually, to try to see if there is some kind of jiu-jitsu going on there. I mean, they have a gym you can use all the time, but I don't think they have mats or anything. I don't know. I just wish it wasn't so fucking expensive. You go to 24-hour fitness, $30 a month, and this shit's costing me $100.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll end on this. When I first started doing jiu-jitsu, I was living in Bloomington, Indiana. I wasn't a student, but there's a club on campus, and it's a pretty decent club. When I was there was a good purple belt and a good blue belt that was running it, that's probably the best you're going to find at a club like that. Any belt higher than that, they should be running their own class at an actual gym. But I was paying, I think it was something like $20 a semester or $50 a semester or something like that, something stupid. And that was 2 days a week, maybe 3 days a week, and classes were like 2 hours long. So that's probably the best you're going to get at a university like that. But let's move on. UFC 158 coming up this Saturday. Derek, I know you're not one for all the pre-fight histrionics, but with the conference call last week, which I thought was a bit overrated. I didn't find it as, and I listened to it, on tape delay. But the press conference this afternoon, I thought was way more entertaining. Did you watch it? Did you have a chance to get a look at it? I know you're usually not one to do that.
That's a one-word answer. No, I did not watch it. I have. If you have Twitter, then you don't need to watch anything anymore. They give you the good bits from press conferences and shit like that. And if you follow the right people, you get a nice, a nice filter on what doesn't matter, and the little quotes that do, especially from his interview after the press conference, which I think is going to end up being more newsworthy than the conference itself.
Which is sort of insane because the press conference itself was pretty.
It's like I said, if Nick Diaz isn't doing this to sell a fight, if he's not doing this to make extra money or to make Dana happy or the UFC happy, then he's an actually crazy person.
Well, and they asked him on Sportsnet if this was to sell fights or what, and he said, "This is me. This is 100% truth. This is not, I'm not trying to sell a fight."
And the thing is, I don't know which one is the case because nobody really says, "Yeah, I actually like the guy. I'm just bullshitting you." Like Ken and Tito didn't do that before the fight; they did it after. Chael Sonnen's always in character until it actually happens. So I don't expect somebody to be like, "Oh no, this is all bullshit." But at the same time, when Nick Diaz says, "No, this is really how I feel," it might be true, and that scares me.
Yeah, and it was unfortunate when I was watching the press conference. I was actually more listening to it. I didn't really have an opportunity to watch it on the screen, but George St. Pierre did not sound happy. And if he's in on it, if it's some sort of pro wrestling thing where they're trying to build up the fight, and I don't know if they need to because of the history they have, but there was an argument that because of the way that this got put together with Diaz coming off a loss and off a year of suspension, that they needed something extra to sell it. But if GSP's in on it, he's doing a remarkable job.
Yeah, and this takes me back to the Monty Teo situation, and the Onion ran a great story about him scraping up the $5,000 for his combine fee because somebody told him he needed $5,000 to participate in the NFL Combine. If he didn't pay it today, it would be $10,000 tomorrow. So he was really lucky. He pulled it together. It's great, but some of these guys are just I don't believe in their acting capabilities in the way that a lot of people do. I don't think that every time they walk outside or they pick up their phone to tweet, they put on a face and say, "All right, let's not fuck up here. Let's show the people what they want." I don't attribute that level of A, forethought, and B, investment emotionally into their public persona that a lot of people do. So no, I think that George St. Pierre really doesn't like the guy. If the hotel story is true from a couple of years ago, and GSP, some people just get a bug up their ass about some people. They just don't like them. I do that to a lot of people. So it's not something that I've never seen before. I believe it. I still don't think it should have dictated his next fight. I don't think champs should get to say, "I don't like that guy. Let me fight him next." And then that's the way it happens. I think that part is bullshit. There are two guys on this fight card that are ranked higher than Nick Diaz in most polls. And that's Carlos Condit and Johnny Hendricks. They're fighting on the co-main event of this card, and you didn't hear a fucking peep from them today. Nothing.
You heard a little bit from Hendricks. I don't know if I heard anything from Condit. I know my buddy was telling me that Condit was having a hard time not laughing while Nick was going off.
First of all, Nick Diaz says, "I think Carlos Condit beat GSP, and I think Jake Shields did too." I almost understand the Shields thing because that's his teammate. But you also think that you beat Carlos Condit. So if I'm Carlos Condit, I'd been laughing my ass off too. He left the last conference call.
Yeah. One thing too about Hendricks, it might have been one of the only questions he got asked, but someone was inquiring about, Dana basically said that if he wins, he's finally going to get the title shot and what he thought about it. And Hendricks had a really good answer. He said, if I beat Carlos Condit, it's a great win for me. It's great going into either Diaz or GSP, and it's another fight for me to get better. And I thought that was the most important part. Hendricks has beaten a bunch of good guys going into this, and if he can beat another good guy, get even that much more experience heading into, and especially with the atmosphere of this card. It's a big card. It's a co-main slot right before Diaz and GSP. I think it's only a good thing for him.
And that's fine to think, but as you alluded to earlier, when you are coming off of a loss and a positive drug test, you should not get a title shot. Overeem was coming off of a win and a drug suspension, and he didn't get a title shot. Chael Sonnen was coming off of a loss and a drug suspension, and if it wasn't for the drugs, he would have gotten an immediate rematch. But instead, he came back and he had to win 2 fights against really good top 10 guys, both of which were dangerous to him in different ways, to get back to a title shot. And Diaz, basically, all the shit that you don't like about him, all the things that are unprofessional, all the things that Dana hates about him, all the things that hurt the card that he's on, and all its history with Jay Huron, which never gets talked about, skipping drug tests and things of that nature. It seems like that got rewarded. And that's the shitty thing about this. Now, if I'm Johnny Hendricks, I would have sat on my hands forever and said, you call me when the title shot is available. I'm not fighting anybody until then. But, mad props to him for taking a Carlos Condit fight. It's so dangerous, though, because he might lose. And if Condit wins, I'd love to see that fight again. The switch that Condit hits that they were showing during the highlights is so beautiful. Like, you didn't think anybody could do that, George St. Pierre. Took George St. Pierre down while he was getting leaned against the cage. That doesn't happen to George St. Pierre. Yeah,
and Hendricks is last I checked, I believe is like a minus 150, maybe a minus 135 favorite. So it's not like he's an overwhelming favorite in this fight. I might actually take Condit here. We'll get to that in a second. Before we actually get into GSP Diaz the fight, one thing Nick kind of alluded to it at the press conference. I don't think he directly said anything about George, but afterwards on the interview with Sportsnet. He I think pretty explicitly accused George of being on steroids. He's got I think there was some line about having a cup of urine on him. And then when asked about whether he would test clean after the fight, he said, "I can't guarantee anything," and basically ran down the fact that he's still smoking marijuana, quote unquote, medicinally. And that he did more this time to try to prevent coming back with a positive test than last time.
It's so dumb. And not only did he say, here's the actual quote: "I believe he's on plenty of steroids, and I don't think they test around here either." That's the part I want to get back to. I don't think they test around here either. Quote: "I doubt I'll be tested as well. I don't care what they say to fans or the media. I don't think we'll be tested. And if so, he's probably got a bottle of piss in his pocket." So not only is George St. Pierre a steroid user, which there's absolutely zero evidence for except for the fact that your girlfriend wants to bone him. No evidence at all other than the guy's complete physicality and domination in the sport. Not only that, but your employer, the UFC, the athletic commissions, because almost all of George St. Pierre's fights have not been in Canada, they've been elsewhere. They're in on it. And they're protecting him. It's this, and like I said, that part has nothing to do with making money or building steam for the fight or trying to get more viewers. It serves two purposes. One, if you lose, he's on steroids. BJ Penn, same deal. Two, it's so frustrating to me. It really is. The other thing, it has nothing to do with making money. This is where I think Nick Diaz is a crazy person. He probably really believes this in his head, that the world has conspired to put George St. Pierre in the position that he's in, and that they're all in on it, and that they'll screw him any way they can. And if he really believes that, then he is crazy.
Yeah, that's probably the most interesting thing about Nick is that within those long 5 to 10 minute rambling answers that he gives to questions, he finds himself contradicting himself at least once, if not twice or 3 times. A lot of times during this build-up, he said something about George or to George, and then when George says something back to him, he's like, "Oh, I'm not calling you out. I'm not trying to intimidate you," which of course makes for good quotes leading up to the event. But let's get into the fight, Derek. I think we both can agree that stylistically, not a great fight for Nick Diaz. The Achilles heel, at least the one that people like to tag on him, is his takedown defense. George, obviously, one of, if not the best MMA wrestler right now, or at least over the past 5 years. If Nick Diaz were to win, how do you see it going down?
He lands one of his pretty princess pillow punches right on the spot that George St. Pierre doesn't like, or behind the ear. GSP gets a little bit wobbled, and then he just follows up with volume. That's about it. I don't see him subbing him. Nick Diaz hasn't submitted anybody in a while, actually. And
didn't he submit Cyborg?
What was that? 2.5 years ago?
I mean, depending on what your definition of a while is, I'll check Diaz's record here.
And Cyborg, the fact that Cyborg almost leg kicked him into oblivion. Cyborg Santos had
Uh,
successful moments in that fight.
yeah, Cyborg was Um, there's two things I want to kind of one thing I want to ask you, and then one thing I want to talk about, kind of building off what you just said. The thing I want to ask you: does Carlos Condit's head kick, I think in the third round of that fight, where it wobbled George, probably the most vulnerable we've seen George since the first Sarah fight. Does that concern you at all going into this fight?
Oh, you cut out there for a little bit. What is it? What is it that I'm supposed to be concerned about? Or you're
The
asking me?
the the, the head kick that Carlos Condit landed in the third round, the one that wobbled St. Pierre, the one that probably the most vulnerable we've seen George since the first Sarah fight. Does anything
Right.
about that concern you?
Not vis-a-vis Nick Diaz's chair. I think Carlos Condit was the best welterweight that George St. Pierre had fought in a long, long time. And, long time again, 3 years. I think he's better than Jake Shields, better than Dan Hardy, better than Thiago Alves, better than John Fitch. So I think that Carlos Condit was a hell of a bar, and that George St. Pierre, coming off of that kind of layoff and that kind of surgery, he looked beautiful. He looked fantastic in that fight to me. The Carlos Condit just acquitted himself well, and it doesn't mean that St. Pierre's fallen off. It means that Condit was a new level of opponent for him. I think he's probably better than BJ Penn at 170. So you really have to go back in time for the last time that George St. Pierre had that quality of a matchup. And I think that Carlos Condit is better than Nick Diaz, as evidenced by their fight. He's got more tools. Nick Diaz isn't going to hit a switch on George St. Pierre and take him down. That's simply not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. Coming out of that fight back in February, I definitely thought that the head kick was more. I mean, and the other thing too, if you watch the replay, it was just one of those things where in a weird transition, Carlos was able to throw a kick, kind of a funky looking kick, and kind of catch George off guard. But ultimately, I agree with you. I thought George looked great coming off that layoff. I thought Carlos acquitted himself well. As an underdog there. The other thing I wanted to mention, and it was kind of building off what you said, I watched there's a free fight on the UFC app on Xbox. It was the Diaz Zaromskis fight back in January 2010, and even in that fight, Nick got hit a couple of times. I think he got dropped once. And between that fight, the Cyborg fight we mentioned, the Paul Daly fight, where
and these are not very good fighters.
good strikers, not
here.
great fighters. Also,
Sure.
even the second KJ Noons fight.
Yeah, okay. A lot of people had KJ winning that fight,
I thought Diaz won. I thought
but it was 3-2 either way.
I don't remember. I do remember that there were just a
You
ton
gave
of
KJ
strikes.
2 nouns. You gave KJ 2 nouns.
I might have. I have to go back and look, but I know that there was a lot of strikes thrown. Nick landed a bunch, but Nick also ate a lot, which is not uncommon for him.
No, it's not. But what would happen if George St. Pierre engaged in a striking battle with Paul Daly?
Right.
Paul Daly get knocked the fuck out.
And also too, even the BJ Penn fight. I thought BJ looked good in that first round. It was just
That's like a motherfucker.
Nick's pace and Penn's propensity to kind of slow down, kind of bit him in the ass. And if you look at Nick's record, we'll just go from when he got back in the Strikeforce. We'll start when he entered Strikeforce. Frank Shamrock, Scott Smith, Marius Zaromskis, Maha Sakurai, KJ Noons, Cyborg Santos, Paul Daly, BJ Penn, and a loss to Carlos Condit. That's not exactly a murderer's row.
No, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's not the 27 Yankees that he was mowing down before he got into the UFC. And like you said, a lot of those fights were, Diaz was fight of the year, round of the year, because it was back and forth and because there was a near stoppage when Daly dropped him and he face planted into the mat. And Nick Diaz may have better cardio than George St. Pierre in a macro sense. He may have a better triathlon time. And if the fight went 40 minutes or 45 minutes, then Diaz might get the advantage over George St. Pierre that he gets over guys like Fat Sakurai after 2 minutes or 3 minutes. But George St. Pierre and Nick Diaz will both be the same level of active at 25 minutes in. And just like Carlos Condit was, Condit did not slow down in that fight. He got almost, caught in the fifth round, but he was still able to defend, and he got up and he was okay, not huffing and puffing. So these advantages that Nick Diaz has over these weaker guys. So when you're a sloppy striker and you have a propensity to fight, but you have a little better chin and way better cardio than the other scrubs, you're going to look like $1 million fucking dollars. It's not going to work like that when you fight top 5 guys.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm tweeting out the
Don't ever say that again.
tournament of bad link.
Sorry, I was tweeting.
Sorry, guys.
Seriously.
So I think we're both gonna take GSP. Not exactly stepping on a limb. And to answer my question I asked you a little bit ago, to me, if Diaz were somehow to win this, I think he's gonna have to land something early that either cuts GSP or hurts his eye. You know, something similar to the Shields
Jake
fight.
Shields, they've been working on the eye poke all fucking week.
Well, something has got to happen that sets George off his rhythm and that Nick can capitalize at the end of the third round and then into the fourth and fifth. Otherwise, knowing George, knowing how George fights, I wouldn't be surprised if he just took Nick down just to almost trolling him, since Nick complained loudly and longly about being held down and guys elbowing him in the face.
And longly.
That's
lovely alliteration.
Yeah, so I
like it.
I'll take GSP out and I'll take him by decision. I think Nick's gonna be Nick. He's a tough dude and he's got 25 minutes in him.
I'm going to take George St. Pierre TKO by cut 30 seconds in so the fans can just fucking melt down in front of me. I can flip them off and laugh at them.
The only other fight I want to talk about in this card, although the Marquardt, who's Marquardt fighting in this show?
Come on, man. Have that page up before you get started.
It should be up. I had it up earlier.
Holy shit, Mike.
I
got to do everything around here.
God, this is bad radio.
Ooh, this one gets its own Wikipedia page. That's fancy. All right, yeah.
Jake Ellenberger.
Yeah, which is he's going to lose. Jake Ellenberger's going to win that fight.
Yeah, I agree. To give an update to my dad about the Hawks game, there's a fight. Andrew Shaw's beating the shit out of somebody.
Your Nana's probably like, yeah,
so
get him.
We'll stick with Condit Hendricks. I actually really like Condit in this fight. I have to admit that I've been a guy who's picked against Hendricks. I kind of see him as a one-trick
every fucking time. When was the last time you picked Johnny Hendricks to win a fight?
I don't know.
Probably Rick Story, and you've been mad ever since.
He just comes off to me as a one-trick guy, but I know he's not. And then when he blasts guys, I'm like surprised but not surprised.
Well, he's just, you remember the Koscheck fight and you remember the Pierce fight, and you're like, between those two fights, he's probably not 2-0. But he is. And, it's just, I don't think that Carlos Condit has that level of wrestling. He hasn't been, he's got cool. It's a hell of a fight. It's really hard to say.
It's a great fight.
But I don't doubt Johnny Hendricks to the extent that you do. I thought that he should have sat on his hands and said, call me when you're going to give me a title shot.
Well, it's just a fight that, and I just see Carlos kind of how you alluded to earlier. He just has, to me, more tools. I think he'll probably run a similar game plan to what he used against Diaz. It'll be a little different considering that the styles are different, but it'll be that same in and out sort of style.
He never had to defend a shot against Nick Diaz. That's probably going to change here.
Maybe.
He was able to avoid Dong Young Kim's grappling, awesome flying knee.
It's true.
I mean, he stuffed down, had his back against Cager for a little bit. That's a fight where you would say, like, I'd flip a coin. If you can get either guy at plus 140, I'd probably take a flyer on it.
Yeah, that's not bad advice. So, are you going to take Johnny Hendricks? Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, it's big rig, bro. Like, he's got a beard, so we got that for us, which is nice. And with the win streak that he's on, putting down John Fitch, the destruction of Martin Kampman, who gave Carlos Condit a hell of a fight. If you're going by common opponents, you got to go Hendricks.
It's true.
So I know you're going to pick Condit because you hate Johnny Hendricks, and that's okay.
I don't hate Johnny Hendricks. I actually like Johnny Hendricks a lot. To be fair too, I also really like Carlos Condit. That plays into it a lot for me.
I can't believe it's unreal to me that this stupid freak show Colin Fletcher's on the main card of this. That's Eddie Alvarez's spot, the one that Colin Fletcher's filling right now. Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate it.
I'm gonna move on here. I want to talk about this a little bit. The tournament of badge running. I changed the format this year. Last year, and even when I did it for Bloody Elbow, I took probably about a week to get through the first round, and then a
Oh,
couple
it's
days
just
for
when
the
you
second
spend
round.
a million years listing the nominees.
No, we're not going to do that again this year, Derek. We are down to the final 8, though.
Word. That'll work.
Um,
What are
have
our
you
regions?
have you been following Derek at all?
I voted in the first round, and then I checked the next day, and you were like, "Oh, second round's done." I was like, "What the fuck?" It progressed so quickly. I couldn't do it.
I like it this way more. I think it's keeping people's interest more. I'm not having to spam.
Really,
I
do
need to
your
spam
vote? Do your
Twitter.
vote totals reflect that?
Um, it, I'm getting a pretty consistent vote total each day. The first day was the biggest, and that's to be expected, I think.
And
I
then
don't remember what I got.
dwindles.
I don't remember what I got last year. I'm sure I could check, but I don't think we've seen a appreciable gain or decrease. But I will give you the final 8 that we got going here. In the John Hess region, we have the number 1 seed Lloyd Irvin's Hive of Scum and Villainy against the number 3 seed UFC's title shot Gong Show. Yeah, and Lloyd Irvin's been just crushing opposition so far. And I do want to point out there was an attempt. It looks like to take out Lloyd Irvin this round. I snuffed it out. I'm gonna have to institute some anti-ballot box staff.
Are you kidding
stuffing.
me? They got Team Lloyd Irvin affiliates stuff in the ballot box of the tournament.
No. I think I have an idea of who it might be. Some of our friends on Twitter, but I don't want to make accusations that I can't prove.
Yes, you do. I want to make them do it.
Moving on to the Harold Howard region, number 1 seed John Fitch, former UFC fighter, is taking on number 3 seed King Mo. Bellator also ran.
Who are the number 2 seeds that have gone down so far?
2 seeds gone down in the first region was TRT, and I'll win the fight. And then in the Howard region,
That one.
in the Howard region, it was UFC Bellator Eddie Alvarez Love Triangle. Moving on to
Eddie Alvarez went down.
Eddie Alvarez went down to.
Oh, I'm done with this tournament. That was the prohibitive favorite. The seeding was bullshit, number 1. But Eddie Alvarez getting screwed out of $1 million fucking doesn't rate with you people. Go to hell.
In the Art Jimerson region, number 1 seed John Jones DUI, A Blessing, is taking on number 2 seed Chael Sonnen's Spitting Back Fist. And in the Steve Jenham region, we have the number 1 seed Ronda Rousey's Interesting Dead Kids Conspiracy, taking on the Cinderella number 10 Work from Mount. There was one.
Yeah, that's a late comer. I mean, that came in right under the deadline submission. But dear Christ, Herb Dean. I was wrong when I overreacted to the Struve stoppage because I thought it was quick, but Struve said, "Hey, man, my tooth is implanted in my cheek. If you can get it out, I can keep fighting." And Herb said, "No." So that's perfectly defendable. But when if you dare stand somebody up for Mount, I dare you. I'd look up at the referee if he told. I'd say, "I dare you. I fucking dare you, there, man. Take this position away from me, please."
Well, and especially a referee like Herb Dean. It's one thing. I mean, it's bad when those guys that you see once every few months does it. But when it's Herb Dean, the guy who's kind of been anointed as the best referee in the sport.
Hey, let's work. I mean, like, root for him, but like, I'm gonna stand you up. I'd look up at it with my hands in the air, like, are you fucking kidding me? So the cameras could hear me. I think Dana would love me for it.
I do want to point out the one entrant that I'm really upset lost, and they lost in the first round. Was the number 5 seed in the Harold Howard region, Corn Nuts Crunch Crunch, losing a very close 51-49 decision to Eric Prindle's ballsack axe kick.
Oh, that was a bad one.
It was bad, but I really like the Corn Nuts one. I don't know. I always get a kick out of that thing when it comes up on the pay-per-view, and you hear that. It just seems so ridiculous to be on a UFC pay-per-view. Anything you want to say about the tournament, Bad Derek, before we move on here?
Yeah, it's fucking bullshit. Eddie Alvarez should have won. That's unreal that Eddie Alvarez is out before in the Sweet 16. That's ridiculous.
Well, I will say this. I took out. I had to take out some of the offending ballots here, but there is an upset brewing. There is an upset brewing in the last 8 here. I'm not going to hint at it, but don't be surprised if one of the number 1 seeds goes down here. The other thing I want to say, tomorrow will be the Futile 4, and then on Saturday we'll be running the championship event. I originally planned to run that throughout the weekend and then post it on Monday, but with the UFC on Saturday, Doesn't really make any sense not to just run it while people are watching the UFC at home on Twitter. So you should get an announcement Saturday night, sometime after the pay-per-view, about who is the worst of the worst in 2013. And speaking of tournament of bad entrants, number 4 in the John Hess region, Dr. Johnny Benjamin.
Oh God.
We had a little fun with him this week, didn't we, Derek?
I'm so exhausted with all this other bullshit that you've thrown at me in the last 10 minutes. I don't even know if I have it in me to rant properly about the unprofessional trolling and self-promotion of Johnny Benjamin. It's absolutely disgusting. If I was Brian Stan, I'd be fucking pissed.
Yeah, I have that quote right up here. There's an interview with Buddy Elbow. He did a 2-part interview, and this part of it was talking about fighters that he feels should retire. In particular, he was talking about Brian Stan for whatever reason, and I'll read the quote to you. The thing about Brian Stan is that you have to wonder if he's received any concussions while he was in the military. Has he been involved in any blast situations with IEDs or things like that? Lots of data we're receiving now regarding concussive force is coming from soldiers.
Yeah, because they get examined by fucking doctors on and off the battlefield. People that have actually met and diagnosed them with things, you asshole. Actual brain doctors, actual neurologists.
Well, and the big story, or the meat of this interview was about Stefan Struve, who's been knocked out 5 times in his career, and Benjamin's,
not unconscious, but lost by KO or TKO.
Yeah,
yes. Was
Benjamin
not knocked unconscious by Mark Hunt. I have not heard whether or not he received a concussion.
Yeah, but Benjamin saying not only should Struve consider retirement, but if he's not going to retire on his own, Dana should consider talking to him. One of the things I said on Twitter about this, and it's interesting that this is coming the week after we were talking about Vanderlei Silva. It's not so much, when unqualified people like you and I are talking about this stuff, and it's a debate, it's interesting, it's fun. But when it's a medical professional, it's a little different situation, especially when it's someone whose specialty is not brain trauma. It's not neuroscience. It's
someone who's taken the Hippocratic Oath. And, you hear from people that, doctors don't give a shit about that, but really they should. Especially when it comes down to you're taking a shit on every doctor that's ever looked and cleared Stefan Struve and Brian Stan. You're saying, fuck you guys, I know better than you, you messed up, you're putting these guys in danger. You're taking a shit on every doctor that's ever looked at them when you come in and diagnose them from afar.
Well, and I said this too when I don't remember how long ago it was we were talking about it. I remember it was when Roth had that rant against Benjamin.
Yeah, this was right after Dr. Johnny Benjamin called a guy fat.
Yeah, when you talk to a lawyer, if you have any friends that are lawyers and you ask them a law question, if it's not in their field, the first thing they'll say is, that's not really my specialty.
No, I can give you a general idea, but I don't know the specifics, and you should talk to somebody that does.
Yeah.
Anyone that specializes in anything. If you talk to a tech guy that specializes in PCs, yes, and Mac questions, he's like, well, I've messed with him a little bit, I can give you an idea, but I don't really know.
Yeah, the first thing is always, that's not my specialty. The second thing usually, and number 2 and 3 kind of go back and forth. Number 2 is usually, I can recommend you someone, or I can try to find someone for you. And number 3 is, if they do give you advice, they always explicitly tell you, this is not legal advice that I'm giving you. This is only my opinion based on my general knowledge of the law. And anytime you see Johnny Benjamin interviewed, especially when it comes to stuff that's not his specialty, which apparently is spinal care, I've never seen him say anything along the lines of, I'm not a spinal doctor. This isn't my specialty. You might want to talk to this other person.
No, you can't do an eyeball test, but, I mean, look at Alistair Overeem. Come on. Like, what kind of a fucking doctor says this shit? A guy who's only interested in promoting himself, getting his shiny website picture put up on all these different MMA blogs, and, getting covered by people that just frankly don't know any better because, there's enough material on Johnny Benjamin now between the trolling Kimbo lynching article and the women should only fight 3 rounds because this is breaking fucking news. The longer people fight, the more likely they are to get hurt.
Not 3 minutes. There are 3 rounds. 3-minute rounds.
Yeah, no, 3-minute rounds. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. But no, because the longer people fight, the more likely they are to get hurt. I don't know if you knew that. That was his entire justification. That if you look at the studies, the longer that people are fighting, the more likely they're injury or getting tired. Plus, women's MMA sucks, so I don't want to see him fight for that long. That was literally his argument, and this was years ago. This is not new. The UFC lynched Kimbo Slice by paying him about $1 million. Lynching has evolved. We've gotten a lot nicer about it.
Yeah, it's really upsetting that Roth couldn't be on the show because I know he.
I believe he will be, and he's actually going to interview actual doctors because he's related to actual doctors who will probably say, in my professional opinion, I'm not a specialist in assholes or anything. I'm not a proctologist, but Johnny Benjamin is an asshole.
Last thing I want to talk about, Derek, with you, I want to try to introduce this new segment called Would You Rather? This topic in particular I talked about on Twitter, I think on Tuesday. But I'm basically going to give you two different scenarios, and I want you to choose which one you'd rather do or take or participate in. The question I had, I don't know if you saw this, so hopefully you didn't, and it's fresh to you. But if you did, you can draw on that. Whose career would you rather have, assuming they retired right now? And this includes their wins and losses, injuries, any sort of controversy they've been in. Shane Carwin or Chet Congo?
Shane Carwin. I have a belt in my house. I have a UFC belt on my banister. I won my first 11, or I think it was 11, maybe it was 12 fights in my career by first round finish, either KO, TKO, or submission. I beat Frank Mir, which not a lot of people can say they ever did. And I took Brock Lesnar to the limit. I was one of the two undefeated monsters that he fought after the surgery, and I happened to be the one that he beat. And then I lost by decision to Junior Dos Santos in 3 rounds because he couldn't finish me.
Now, the original question that I posed on Twitter was which career was better, and most people came back with Carwin, which I think is pretty fair. I think the thing that makes it more interesting, asking which career would you rather have, is Congo has had a longer run in the UFC, almost especially at heavyweight, almost an unprecedented run. The amount of fights he's had, especially in not having a title fight, is almost insane. And the two marks I have against Carwin, one, right now his body has got to be fucked. He's got multiple back and neck injuries. I don't know what his most recent injury was that he's out now with, but that's another injury that's just tacked on. He's a 38-year-old guy who is a monster of a human being, who will probably, and this is obviously just conjecture, but will probably have more physical ailments going forward than Congo. And I don't remember what the other point was. What was the point?
Well, I'll help you out. He blew his knee out, and that's why he couldn't fight.
Yeah.
So he may never fight again, but, like you said, if they retire right now.
The other argument against Carwin, and fortunately for him, this never blew up, was the steroid allegations against him a few years ago. And by steroid allegations,
like 2004, like before he entered the UFC by a lot.
Well, that happened back then, but the news didn't come out until 2009 or it's got to be later than that, 2010 or 2011. He's fortunate that.
No. Before that. My first article on Watch Caleb Run had to do with that, so that was like 09-ish.
It was.
With his manager, with the SEC allegations, like that story came out at the same time.
I thought it was 2010. Whatever.
2010.
2010.
No,
2009 and 2010. But the fortunate thing for him is that he got asked one question by Ariel Helwani in a really weird interview. Basically said no comment, and then it never got brought up again by anyone else, which I thought was interesting. But those are my two arguments against him, and the fact that he only had 6 fights in the UFC. Apparently, his deal wasn't that great with the UFC. He complained a lot I'm going to
give you an argument here that I used probably a year and a half ago when they announced that John Olavinamo was going to fight Shane Carwin. Okay, I'm going to throw this at you, and you tell me what you think about it. Okay.
Okay.
Guy came on to Bloody Elbow and said John Olavinamo is going to beat Shane Carwin. I'm going to make a bunch of money betting on it. Everyone said you're fucking nuts. Throughout the discussion, Carwin's allegations came up. And John Olavinamo had a disease, flesh-eating bacteria that ate part of his foot. So if you want to talk about physical ailments, like you go tit for tat on that. But ultimately, it came down to Carwin has used steroids, got caught for it, and Olav has not. When somebody lives and trains in Europe, they're living and training in countries that don't routinely investigate these things. So if I'm going to believe that Shane Carwin has used steroids, I really don't have a reason not to believe that Czech Congo has, given the environment that he trains in and the place that he lives. Is that fair?
So wait, you're saying...
I'm saying that if you're going to kill a guy for getting caught in America for doing steroids, then you have to look with a special eye at people that live and train in countries that don't give a shit.
I find that especially interesting argument from you, considering...
I hate the eyeball test. I hate I'm an innocent until proven guilty guy. I don't think that it's 90% like a lot of people do, and I really don't like accusing guys of being cheaters, because I think that there are a lot of people that write a lot of things that if guy was in front of them and said, I'm not a cheater, tell me I am, they wouldn't do it. So I try to stick to people like Josh Barnett, where I'd be happy to say, yeah, you're a cheater. Like that, if you kick my ass, that's fine, but you're a cheater. Well,
for me, and I'll end this discussion on this. For me, it really comes down to, and I'd have to run the numbers, who made more money. If it was if there was an appreciable difference on Congo's side.
Much money for the Lesnar fight? Like, that's probably 5 Congo fights right there.
Well, that was one of the things going into the Lesnar fight, is that Carwin was complaining they didn't have a pay-per-view bonus. Whatever bonus he got was straight from the UFC at their world. And Congo has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, almost 3 times as many UFC fights as Carwin.
And some of the night bonuses that add up. But those of the night bonuses are between, back in the day 30 and nowadays 60,000. I believe that it was reported that Carwin made $1 million for the Lesnar fight, between endorsements, between his base pay, and between his bonus, which I think was $500,000. Well, they just cut him a check for and said, "Here you go." So between that and the Frank Mir fight, which I think was also knockout of the night, he had a couple knockout of the nights before that. You could do the math on it, who was just where it was disclosed and where it wasn't, but I think Carwin would come out on top there, especially if you look at it on a per fight or length of career basis.
It might be close, and I just want to point out UFC 137, which is the most recent Congo fight that we could have reported payout data. Congo made $140,000 with his base and win bonus, beating Matt Mitrione.
How much was his bonus for the Pat Barry fight? I'm going to try to pull that up if I can find it.
I don't know if you're going to get it. It's Pennsylvania. $50,000 bonus.
$50,000 bonus.
And I would imagine in relation to the Mitrione fight, he probably made either 70-70 or like 60-65. So he probably made close to $200,000, if not over that night.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably competitive, but again, if you go per fight, then there's no contest. And I
look at it more. That's the question.
Are you talking totality of MMA career, or totality of UFC career?
Really, the UFC is the only thing that matters. Neither guy fought in a big promotion outside the UFC.
Burn, dude.
But I don't know. I think it's an interesting one. I have a pretty decent one for next week that hopefully Roth will be around for, that I can ask you guys. But yeah, there's.
How about Hunt getting a title shot if he beats up Junior Dos Santos?
I mean, you got to give it to him at this point.
Hard to deny. That's the great thing about sports. If you keep winning, they can't deny you.
As we're heading out here, instead of your last thought, Derek, did you see the interview that Stephan Bonner gave?
Nope, just some quotes from it, and I believe the only one that really matters from it is "I fucked up." So that's nobody's ever going to admit to it. There wasn't an apology. It was just "I fucked up."
He admitted to it. I mean, he admitted that he did it.
But didn't admit it to it like I bought some steroids and shot him in my ass. I think it was I bought something I shouldn't have, right?
No, it was the same excuse he used last time. He had an injury. He didn't feel strong. He wanted that strength back. He used it. Then found out he was getting the Silva fight, and didn't really know what to do.
Well, you don't care, so...
I don't care.
No, you don't care at all.
Anderson Silva blasted him in the face anyway.
More in the sternum.
Well, he blasted him regardless. That's the show. We'll see you next week. Still 0-0 Blackhawks.
Come back, Pat.